Sup, homie students? Welcome to Iain Talks History. Today we are going to explore the process of reading historical documents. There is an unbelievable amount of material out there, and it's impossible to read every word of every document that is important. We need techniques that will make the process simple and efficient and get you to the point as quickly as possible. When we talk about reading historical documents, this is not as simple as opening a book, looking at words, and turning pages. Reading must involve internalizing and synthesizing the new information into your worldview so that you are able to maximize its usefulness. This is about applicable knowledge, not about acquiring random facts or memorizing things. So to do this, we need the concept of active reading. That when you are reading something, you're not just looking at it, you are actively thinking and processing. And when you're doing your reading, you're trying to integrate the important ideas and figure out what you need to know versus what is simply interesting or even irrelevant. Key questions to consider as you read a document are, how does this fit in with other things that I've learned? Do I need to change or alter a previous opinion that I have based on this new information? So as you read the new ideas, you're already thinking about how they fit in and how they connect with other things that you have read or become aware of. Ask yourself, what is the author trying to say? If I had to explain this document to someone else, what would I need to tell them so they can understand what's important? Focus on explanation rather than summary or description. The point of active reading is to look for the answers to the why and so what questions. Why do things happen the way they do, and why should we care? Assume that most people don't care about most things most of the time. As you read, engage with the text using underlining, annotations, or other forms of marginalia to give yourself a shorthand code for what you're reading. You could take an example like this one, where you can see underlines are used for key quotes or arguments. Margin strikes, the vertical lines, are there to indicate key passages where there's important ideas or maybe less useful quotes that could be paraphrased. And then marginalia gives me, as the reader of this document, a shorthand for what I was thinking as I was reading it and identifies key places in the text that I will want to revisit later. It doesn't matter what system you use. What matters is that you remain consistent. If you constantly change up your style of annotation, it's going to be hard in a year or two to be able to use those notes as effectively as you did when you made them. So it is better to have a good system that you stick with than a perfect system that changes all the time. Tip: if you do it lightly and in pencil, that textbook is probably still resellable. And you may find that with excellent annotation, someone might pay you more for that textbook. Now let's focus for a minute on reading secondary sources. Secondary sources are going to be your textbook, monographs, academic articles, the things that historians are writing. There are other forms of secondary sources, but these are the primary ones that you're going to need to be able to read to do well in an undergraduate history course. Firstly, use the table of contents or the index to narrow down your readings. It is very rare that you actually need to use the entire contents of a work. If you are conducting research, then you are really trying to focus down on the parts of the work that are going to be relevant to your project. Not all information is created equal, and you don't want to get lost in irrelevant detail. Think about what you are trying to accomplish and use the table of contents and the index to narrow that focus down. Second, focus on where the author is explaining their own purposes. A good secondary source is going to tell you straight up in the introduction, this is what the argument is, this is where it fits into the historiography, this is the source material that I'm using to prove my point. Most of the time, you will look at a book, you will read the introduction and the conclusion, and then you will look at the footnotes. That tells you all of the key ideas, the source material that's being used, and from there you can evaluate how relevant and important these main ideas will be to your own work. The truth is, most of the time we don't have time to read all of these books, all of the relevant research. So a good historian knows that they have to put everything that matters straight up front in the introduction, because that might be everything someone reads. Yep. Make sure that you accurately record where you're getting the information. There is nothing more frustrating than drafting your essay, having the perfect idea, the perfect quote, the perfect paraphrase, and be missing the citation. If you don't know where it came from, you can't use it. So make sure that from the beginning, you are giving the accurate citation information you will need at the end of the process. Never, ever assume that you will remember. Don't put quotes in assuming that you will find them later and go back and find the citations. Make sure you do that accurately. It is not the part of the paper you want to be screwing up. When it comes to reading primary sources, we have a slightly different set of expectations. Primary sources are not going to be, generally, as obvious about their argument or their point. That's not what we're using them for. For primary sources, focus on connecting the document with the larger historical processes and debates. How does this fit into arguments that you've heard of among different historical schools of thought? How does this shed light on political change or economic development or social conflict? Issues like race, gender, sexuality. How do these documents connect to important isms? Conservatism, liberalism, socialism, nationalism. What is the linkage between a specific document and historical processes that we debate? Be careful about trusting primary sources as statements of fact. It doesn't mean that you can't get factual information from them, but you do not want to ignore the bias and manipulation that primary sources can embody. Look for the reasons behind the ideas that they are presenting to you. In sum, remember that you are reading for a purpose. You are looking for useful information that will help you explain why things happen the way they do in history, and to explain to your reader why that is relevant to them. Primary sources give us an insight into the debates and issues of the time. Secondary sources give us more balanced historical perspectives. But in either case, you need to be engaging with the text beyond the surface level. You cannot succeed in history by memorizing. You have to think about what it means, and by focusing on how you would explain it to somebody who is intelligent but not an expert in the topic. You can look for the most significant aspects that you're reading and be able to increase your speed and efficiency while maintaining your ability to get the most relevant and important ideas and data from the reading that you do. History is complicated, and when you read more, you'll need to be able to do it effectively. So good luck with your reading.